And we are live from the streets of London, rounding up today's events at Speaker's Corner, Sunday the 4th of August 2019. It was a good one. I had a good day at Speaker's Corner today. I'm not sure what it was, but there was a positive energy. I had a couple of friendly chats with a few people. I spoke to people that I might not necessarily agree with, but I had good interaction with them, and I keep trying to emphasise this as a priority for Speaker's Corner. It's the people that you don't agree with that you should be talking to. Saj is in the chat, welcome, thank you. And there's Joe Lewis, my friend through Facebook. Welcome, gentlemen. Yeah, you missed out on Speaker's Corner today. If you didn't make it, if you didn't see any of the live footage, or you weren't there in person, you missed out. When I rocked up to Speaker's Corner today, I was worried. I was concerned. Thank you, Saj. Oh, that's for someone else. When I arrived at Speaker's Corner today, someone was missing. Part of the furniture wasn't there. I couldn't hear the voice. I scanned across the horizon. He wasn't standing on his step. Where was Alumba? And for a moment, I thought that our interview with him, our exclusive interview with him last week, asking him who he was and why he does what he was, I thought maybe we'd derailed his career, or maybe we'd made him question everything and he'd given up talking about Alumba, but then before long I heard him bellowing, Alumba said love one another, and everything was back to normal. And Saj is making suggestions in the comments, thank you for that. Yeah, it was a good day. There was a positive vibe. And on the issue of not just chatting to people that agree with you, I had a chat, I stumbled upon a chat with William and another chap whose name I don't even know, and that might be crucial. And they were having a sort of heated exchange about Malcolm X and Nelson Mandela, and I immediately wanted to grab this on camera because I thought, oh, this is a hot topic, and I asked, is it okay if I film this? And of course it sort of interrupted the flow, but this gentleman who was speaking with William was saying that Nelson Mandela was very different from Malcolm X, and I wondered how so, and he sort of emphasised the fact that although we hear that Malcolm X went on Hajj and turned his back on the racism of the Nation of Islam, that was only in the last few months of his life, and for most of his life he was essentially a racist. He had hate in his heart for the blue-eyed devils, the white men. But I think it doesn't matter when you make a change for good, and this is what religion emphasises. You have until the end of your life to make that change. And I'm not sure why religions emphasise the fact that when you're dead, that's it. There's no hope for you. But then again, what if Hitler, on his deathbed, repented and said, "Oh, I regret everything I did"? We're uncomfortable with that idea. That God would forgive that, but presumably if you believe in religion, then you believe that if Hitler became whichever religion is that you follow, whichever one's your favourite, if he embraced that religion moments before he died, then all is forgiven. But the point this guy was making, who unfortunately I don't know the name of, was that Malcolm X made that change very late in his life. I think he meant that Nelson Mandela had been more consistent throughout his life. But Nelson Mandela acknowledged at the end of the struggle that now was the time for forgiveness and reconciliation. So I see Malcolm X and Nelson Mandela as two manifestations of similar attitudes towards their struggle. And in the conversation it had been said that it was surprising for a white man, William, to appreciate Malcolm X and Nelson Mandela. I think he was asked to give two people that he looks up to, that he admires, and the first names that rolled off the tongue were Malcolm X and Nelson Mandela. And I think they're people that you can admire whatever racial background you are. I can understand, obviously, it's more immediately obvious why a black person would admire Malcolm X or Nelson Mandela, but I think there's lessons in there for all of us. And then someone asked William, what is the purpose of life? Is it to be happy? Are we seeking happiness? Is that what we should seek in this life? And it would seem not. From William's perspective and my perspective, the people I look up to, the people I admire, the people I aspire to be like, are not happy people, but they're not angry either. Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela were people that had a right to be angry. They had something to be angry with, but I don't think they would have been angry in themselves. I don't think what they were doing was lashing out in anger. They were taking a pragmatic approach towards bettering their people. And that's what we all have to do, and hopefully we can do it for everybody and not just our own racial group. But I can understand why in their time and place they wanted to focus particularly on their own ethnic group. So that was what kicked off the park this morning. I rocked up and got deep into existential debate with William, and we touched upon Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela. William famously says he doesn't follow politics at all, and whenever the conversation veers towards politics, he kind of loses interest a little bit. All my life I've been all about politics, and I think those are the main issues that we need to talk about. But I think there's a happy medium. If you want to understand politics, you need to understand yourself, and vice versa. And you will never solve problems like apartheid South Africa, like racism in America, if you don't solve your own problems, if you don't come to terms with who you are and practice a little bit of self-mastery. So I had a good chat with William. Then it was on to Ralph, the famous race realist. He's a Trump supporter. He wears a Make America Great Again hat. He wears the British flag proudly. He's from a mixed background himself. He's half Indian, half English, but he's very much in favour of white nationalism. And I'm not sure if he would describe himself as a white nationalist, but he's certainly in favour of white nationalism. So I was chatting to Ralph, who disagrees with me completely politically, because I think he thinks we're at opposite ends of the political spectrum, which essentially we are. But if you do away with labels, we probably actually have some common ground. And he has a joke with me. I know he's put some funny comments on some of my videos, and a lot of people hate him for what he says and what he believes and what he says he believes. But when you interact with him as a person, you can only take people on face value, and you know, he's shown me a lot of respect and a lot of warmth. And this is someone who is supposed to be a racist, far right racist. I think he said the Nazis weren't nearly right wing enough, whatever that means, I don't know. And standing with us was Shawamai, the Hebrew Israelite, who again is at the complete opposite end of a racial spectrum from me, supposedly, and he was saying that he had common ground with Shawamai. Now, funnily enough, the far right, racists and black separatists have had common ground in the past. Saj is saying, how do you call in? If you want to call in, Saj, I can make that an option for you, possibly, but we don't have WhatsApp at the moment, so I didn't bother putting the phone number in, but I may send you the details shortly of how you can. Only you though. This is only for Saj, because he's a special, privileged individual that he might contribute to the show. So yeah, I was chatting with Hebrew Israelites, the far right, so the far black nationalist separatists, the far left. You know what? It may be difficult, Saj. It may be difficult for you to call. All I'll say is, I can't find a number for you. Unfortunately, calling will not be an option tonight, it seems. But we'll keep it on the chat. Whatever you want to say, just say it in the chat, and we will arrange phone calls later. Down the line, I want this very much to be about phone in and be an interactive show. I said I'd go live on a Sunday evening, no matter what, and here I am. And when we get the funding for the studio, we'll be taking Skype calls, we'll take video calls, we'll take anything. Freedom of speech. We'll extend Speaker's Corner on a Sunday in the park to Speaker's Corner on the internet on a Sunday night, which I think is the best time for phone-in radio / YouTube broadcasting, because people have that kind of angst about it being Monday morning in the morning. We can just sort of share. There's lots of news to get through. We talked a little bit about the news last night, the news coming in from El Paso and the mass shooting. I spoke to Ralph on that subject about being a far-right racist with a manifesto written up explaining why he hates Hispanic people and the invasion of the Mexican border, and how Hispanic people could be invading an area called El Paso. I'm not quite sure, because that's kind of a Spanish sounding name to me. That might suggest that the Spanish people were there first, but is it first come, first served? Do the Native Americans have a right to the Americas that supersedes everyone else? And they arrived across the Bering Straits from what would be Siberia via Mongolia, etc. So who are the natives? But there is a saying among the Latino community on the Mexican border in areas like El Paso, which goes, we didn't move, the border moved. So there have been Mexican people living in that region since before the United States was created. So it's a bit rich for a racist to grab his gun and try and drive people back across the border. But this is what you'll get with identity politics, and Ralph the moment I mentioned to him about the far-right attacker, call him a terrorist, he said, "Oh, is he an incel?" And that's a topic that came up last night about generation of men who are involuntarily celibate because they can't interact with women. They're beta males, for want of a better term. Beta, as the Reverend says, and it's driving them to gun violence. And I think this attacker is being declared a terrorist in the press. People are often very quick to say, oh, if he was black or brown skin, he would be a terrorist, but if he is a white person, he's mentally ill. I think that has been true in the past, but it would seem to be shifting, and the word terrorism is being used more widely. And I guess that's fair enough. Joe Lewis is saying, amazing! Yeah, he obviously watches the same Reverend. All right, let's take some comments. Let's see what people are saying. Peace and live Islam. That'd be nice. It's green screen that he's using in the background of the street. Yeah, I'm in a studio. I'm not really outside. You've clocked me. See, you can do anything. You can fake anything these days, even a terrorist attack, even a mass shooting. And there will be people at the ready to call this attack that we've just had fake news. Were they crisis actors? Was it all a hoax? That's what, and I'm not saying that by the way, because that's what got Alex Jones banned from YouTube, I think. He said that Sandy Hook was a false flag operation. And there will always, and it's always people that agree with what's happened or who are sympathetic to what's happened, who will make the arguments for, oh, well, it's a hoax. And it's the same with the far right. It's the same with the Muslims, with some Muslims. There are some Muslims who, whenever a terrorist attack happens, they will immediately scream, false flag, no, it wasn't a Muslim, no, it was so-and-so dressed up as a Muslim, no, it's fake, 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 fake news. Now, I'm not saying that never happens, definitely not, but it doesn't happen every time. Are you with me? I'm not saying there have never been false flag incidents. I could reel off a few that were proven to be genuine. There are false flags. But they don't happen every time. But every time an attack happens, there are some people who say, no, this was a false flag attack. And I'm sure this will be the same for yesterday's incident. It'll be the same next time. And sadly, we've had 2 in the last 24 hours. 2 mass shootings. There will always be people crying fake news, but how come it's different people? The people that cry wolf or cry foul when it's a so-called Islamic terrorist attack don't call that, or maybe they do, I could be wrong. But do they acknowledge that perhaps far-right attacks are being manipulated, being staged, crisis actors? How far do you want to take it? Now, with a country with that many guns and that easy access to guns, mixed with the racism, these events will happen. You wouldn't need to instigate a false flag attack. If you want to use it to spin your agenda, then of course you will. And the people that want to ban guns will always use the opportunity. I mean, it's the wrong way to describe use the opportunity. They will always react when there's an attack such as this, and they will highlight how terrible it is that innocent lives have been lost. Those are the liberals, the left, the Democrats, etc., the people that want gun control. And on the right, when there is a Muslim or so-called Islamic terror attack, the people on the far right who hate Muslims, hate foreigners, hate people with a brown skin, and want to keep their guns, they will use the attack as a reason why they do need guns, why they do need greater immigration control, why they do need to deport people, and possibly why they do need to chase Muslim terrorists in other countries and go and have an away match with them in Iraq. But if they were really tuned in to what causes these terrorist attacks, they would realize that waging war in other countries is what gets you Al-Qaeda. There were no Al-Qaeda in Iraq during Saddam Hussein's time. He was an Arab secular nationalist. Like him or hate him, he had no truck with Al-Qaeda. As soon as he was done away with in the vacuum of power that was left behind, ISIS and the like came from every corner of the globe to fill that vacuum. So this is what some people on the left and perhaps some people on the right might have thought that Donald Trump could have been a lesser of two evils if he was less about invading other countries and more about putting America first. Maybe he could have made the world safer in that sense by not engaging in conflict here, there and everywhere. But it seems like he's been led up the garden path, and he's tapped into his support comes from the communities that traditionally want the guns, want to keep the guns. We talk about lobbying in US politics and groups that would push for a certain agenda. The NRA, the National Rifle Association, have huge influence in America on policy, as do many other groups that we could mention, that we won't mention. But for example, I'll mention one, AIPAC. The warmongers in AIPAC will always have an influence on what's going on. Let's flick through the comments. Living in the inner cities, Irish are the most racist. That's from Jesse James. Sorry to hear that, Jesse James. Kamal is saying back to the studio. Yeah, we're in the studio. Here we are. I'm very sad to hear that Irish might be the most racist in America. The Irish of all ethnic groups should remember how it feels to be the victims of racism, but the victims of racism will often look to punch down, will often look to elevate themselves. Jesse James is mentioning that that's in the UK. All right, in the UK. So you will find, and on my travels around the world, I've found this, the ethnic group or the ethno-religious group that is the second tier, not the elite, not the white man in this country, for example, but people who are marginalised but would quite like to be in the white man's position, will punch down and look down upon whoever's next further down in the racial caste system, as if to sort of say, well, at least we're not like those people. And I believe to, for example, mention Israeli politics. In Israel, as a rule, or in general, the Mizrahi and Sephardim Jewish people from the Middle East, North Africa, Jews with a background in the Middle East and North Africa from the Arab countries, they will tend to vote for the right-wing leaning parties like Likud, more so than the white European Jewish population, the Ashkenazim, who have traditionally held a privileged position, who were the first settlers to the new country, who were the founders of the Zionist movement. They've had a privileged position, and you might mistakenly think they would be more racist than the Jews of an Arab background, who might have something more in common with the Palestinians. Their ancestors spoke the same language, they look similar and eat similar food, but to differentiate themselves from the Palestinians, these Jews of a Middle Eastern background swing further to the right in like a backlash. And I believe Aravim, or Arab, is like a derogatory term for a Mizrahi Jew in Israel. So yeah, it's sad when that happens, but I can understand when it does happen. Other conversations I had in the park today. Yet again, the best conversations seem to happen off camera. But there was a good vibe in the park today, and I think people are getting it now. People that stumbled across my channel when I first came up there and saw that I was being biased towards Muslims, biased towards Islam, because I was calling out the racists. I think people that were critical of that are now seeing that, well, hang on a minute, he's critical of everyone, or he's quite fair, and I will put it on people. And if you're arguing a point, even if I agree with it, I will try to argue the counterpoint. I will try and pose the question that I think other people would want to hear. So it was quite nice today. A few people came up to me and said, "Oh, I like what you're doing with your channel," or "I like this interview that you did with so and so." Of course, people are going to like the interviews that I agree with. What's being said? Jesse James is saying, "Lesson for Life is the best fighter at the park." Well, I might be the best. I'm not the best anything, man. I'd like to be the best debater, but I would like to be the fairest debater. That's what I would hope to be, and we should fight the good fight in a peaceful way. But hey, I do love a punch-up in a sporting sense, of course. I think Darren in the comments is mentioning that the same thing happens with travellers. Yep, obviously, and do you know what? I think travellers are, and I've said this before, I think one of the most victimised ethnic groups that there are. It's open season for travellers in a way that it wouldn't be for other ethnic groups, maybe because of the traveller lifestyle. That means they're off the grid, that they might not be as ready to defend themselves in the press as other ethnic groups. But I have been, through my boxing, exposed to a lot of traveller communities, and I've mingled with people, and I was sad to hear kids of an Irish traveller background. This is years back, and it's just one incident that springs to mind, and I'm by no means saying that this is typical, but kids of an Irish traveller background making derogatory remarks about black people, and I thought, you of all people should know how it feels to be the victim of derogatory remarks. But hey, we're never tarring with the same brush as my special effects in the background. And as Jesse says, not all, but most. And it's not by any means most. I'm exaggerating. Let's have a look at the comments. Food Bottom is saying, have you spoke to Ralph before? Yes, I spoke to Ralph today and we had a very good chat. And we talked about Aryanism, as he is a white nationalist, and if you look into the history of Aryanism and what it really means to be an Aryan, it's not actually to do with having blue eyes and blonde hair. Ralph was agreeing with me on a point that I made to Shawamai, the black Hebrew Israelite, who had told me the original Irish people were black. Stay with me. And I was talking about, in Ireland, the folk tales of black Irish, or black Irish being this term for people in Ireland with very dark hair, dark eyes, that you do see. And Ralph also mentioned the commonality in the music and the dancing. He was making points that I was about to make to him. It was as if he'd done the same research as I had, or watched the same documentaries. So there is a connection between Ireland and Cornwall and Brittany and Portugal and Galicia, all the way down that west coast of the Atlantic to Morocco. There's a documentary about it called The Atlantean Connection. And that does link Europe with Africa at the edge of the continent. And if you look deep into who the Aryans were, Iran, deep in the heart of the Middle East, which is now the Islamic Republic of Iran, is named so because they regard themselves as the true Aryans, and the Irish language for Ireland is Iran. Does that relate to the Aryans? We'd have to look deep into history. But all these peoples that we think of as being different race, or might be divided now in terms of religion, like the Catholics and Protestants in the north of Ireland, who are divided by religion but are yet actually the same people. And whether you want to call yourself Ulster Scots, and among the Unionist community there has been a rise in this sort of identity of we are Ulster Scots, and the Ulster Scots language is being pushed as being equivalent to or a rival to the Irish language. And if you're going to have an Irish language act, you need to have an Ulster Scots act as well. But the Ulster Scots, being the form of Braid Scots spoken in Scotland, is a language or a dialect that comes from Scotland, where originally in Scotland the Irish language came from Ireland, and this Scots or Braid Scots will be an amalgamation of English with words borrowed from the Scots Gaelic that came from before, mixed with Norse. But essentially the Scots are a people who came from Ireland, brought the Gaelic language with them to Scotland. So if you want to call yourself Ulster Scots, you're just calling yourself an Irish person whose ancestors left Ireland, went to Scotland and came back to Ulster, the ancient province of Ireland. We know this, but the division is religion. And Darren is saying, I'll have a chat with you at the park soon, mate. Particularly martial arts. Yeah, we'd love to, Darren. Thank you. We love to chat in martial arts. Joe Lewis is saying, I would love to see you properly debating a black Hebrew Israelite. That way they have nowhere to run. It's interesting you say that, Joe Lewis. And I understand you're from America. I remember the first time I stumbled upon the Hebrew Israelites and was trying to work out who they were, I really disliked the very robotic way that they would recite the Bible with no soul, with no spirit, and they would just reel it off, and as if to say, there you go, I've proved my point, it's in the Bible, yeah, it's in the book. And they seem to be averse to actually having a conversation, actually having a debate, and you say nowhere to run. Some of them will run behind the race issue and just say, well, I can't shake your hand because you are a white man, ostensibly. And here we go again, not all, not all, not all. And I don't know if it is most, but I have to say my good friend Shuamai is not like that at all. He's been very, very welcoming and warm and an absolute breath of fresh air. And if there are more Hebrew Israelites like him, I'm sure there are, I very much welcome a chat with them. But I think it is a group that is quite dogmatic. And groups that have been born out of a liberation struggle, they will be dogmatic. Look at the IRA, for instance. They line up like soldiers and wear all the uniform and the balaclava, and they are regimented. If you feel that you are in a struggle for your survival, for your liberation, you need an army. So you will begin to behave in the manner of a soldier, and some of the Hebrew Israelites have that soldier-esque mentality and personality. But we're all people deep down, and if you can remove the label, remove that veil and have a heart-to-heart, that is the best way to do it. And Joe Lewis is saying no context. Yes, perhaps that is regarding the Bible. Joe Lewis is saying Vocab Malone, look him up. On YouTube he tries, but all they do is yell at him. Yeah, people will yell. People will get angry. People will yell. I did a bit of yelling last week. I really came out of my shell when I was debating the people denying that ISIS are who they really say they are. But that's all right. You've got to get fired up now and then. I know I bang on about not losing your temper and not being violent, but it doesn't mean you can't be passionate and assertive and make your point. I was with George Galloway earlier tonight, someone who really makes his point very well, and he does bellow it out and would get not angry but would get fired up. So yeah, express yourself. Don't be a shrinking violet. But the chat that I had with the Black Hebrew Israelite today, Shuamai, I'll come back to it. I think it's probably worthy of doing a whole video, but I was sort of exploring the possibility that my ancestors might have made their way to Ireland via Morocco, via Scotland and back. And PSV Eindhoven is saying, does George Galloway have a YouTube channel? Yes, he does. If you punch in George Galloway, you'll find him. He must have about 50,000 followers on there. But his channel, you will note, has not been monetized, and I think perhaps would not have been cleared for monetization. I have monetized this channel by all means. I'm not asking for money, but I think it was you're welcome, but I think it was a good move in order to grow the channel, because if you're making money for Google, they are going to want to help you along the way. So I'm sorry about the couple of seconds wait at the beginning of the video these days. It's just a couple of adverts, but I'm not wanting to be singing from any hymn sheet, and it was a decision I made, and I think it was the right thing to do. But once you are being paid by someone, you have to question yourself: Am I saying what I really think, or am I towing the line? And as George Galloway says, I'll talk about anything you want me to talk about, but don't tell me what to say. And I think that's why he's been chased from platform to platform and has wound up on places like RT, Russia Today, and Al Mayadeen TV, a Lebanese TV channel, because he doesn't give the mainstream narrative, and you do put yourself in a difficult position. But what I'm trying to do with this channel, and I will be accused of being biased, because we all are, and Who knows? Maybe it will get taken down one day. But I'm trying to give everyone their say. And then you can be biased in your own way. Because what most people mean when they start insulting and throwing negative comments, they just mean I disagree with what you're saying. But that's fine. We're not all going to agree. And Camille Kellner has tuned in, my man. Thank you. Yes, Julian. Yes, Camille. Glad to have you watching. So another chat that came up today with a newcomer whose name I'm going to butcher now, but his video will be on there. I think his name was Ruhid. Lovely chap who was who is not only a vegan but also an ex-Muslim, and I of course was standing there introducing him to my good friend Barry, who was also an ex-vegan, current vegan and ex-Muslim, and I thought, my goodness, what are the odds of this scenario? But those two had a good chat, and they were talking about morals and the reason why they do what they do. I'm not a vegan, so obviously I don't agree with it 100%. Otherwise I'd be a vegan. But I can see the logic, I can see that they are consistent, but sometimes I think you can be a bit too consistent. If you take everything to the nth degree, then you will never step outside the door. At what point do you become like a Jane who doesn't wish to even tread on an insect? Here's a question coming in. Why does the Irish people, why are the Irish people so protected in terms of the law? Are you sensitive or something? Hold on. I can't quite understand this. Why does the Irish people are so protected in terms of the law? Are you so sensitive and soft? Now, you're going to have to elaborate on that one, Windman, because we didn't understand it. Do you mean laws in the Republic of Ireland? Or do you mean Irish people are somehow uniquely protected by laws elsewhere? Not sure. Not sure what you meant. PSV Eindhoven is asking, have you been to the park and did you make new videos? Yes, I did make new videos today. Not a huge amount. I didn't catch that many fish, as I call it, but I had a few good chats, which is all you can hope for. Camille Kellner is saying laws are a social construct. Food for thought. And Windman95 has elaborated that he meant in the UK. I have no idea what laws uniquely apply to Irish people in the UK, other than the freedom of travel. Irish people from the Republic of Ireland can travel freely into the UK, whether or not the UK remains part of the EU. Jesse James saying most EDL are from an Irish background and most grooming victims are from Irish Catholic backgrounds. I can't speak on whether that's true, and Jesse James, I would ask if you have any evidence or articles, maybe find them for us, but if that is true, that is very sad. I can only give my personal experience and say that Tommy Robinson is from an Irish background, Stephen Yaxley Lennon. Our friend in the park, Braden, Tommy Robinson's supporter, is also of an Irish background, and you've probably seen that video. Could it be that people of an Irish background in England have a little bit of cognitive dissonance or kind of schizophrenia, which doesn't, I'm using that in the wrong context, but split personality disorder, because they look English, they sound English, but really they're not English, and really growing up, most of their family holidays were probably in Ireland, their family were from Ireland, and they know that back home is Ireland, but they've been born here and they've been perceived as English a generation later, so it's kind of a, if you can't beat them, join them. And I think some of them go one way or the other. For me, I feel strongly Irish because I've been removed from Ireland and I miss Ireland and I love learning about Ireland and all parts of Ireland. Others reject Ireland and are embarrassed about the fact that that's where they're from and they want to be more English than the English, but that's a phenomenon. And when the Anglo-Normans arrived in Ireland 1,000 years ago, a few generations later, they became more English than the English. So yeah, I think there is a case to be made for people compensating for some kind of lacking in their identity. Windman is mentioned. You can get away with insulting people from the Eastern Europe, but with the Irish, it's against the law. I don't know if you're trolling Windman, but I don't think there's a unique law that applies to Irish people. Hate speech is hate speech, and we shouldn't say hateful things about anyone. Jesse James is saying over 50 second generation Irish are pro-Islam. Okay. Under 35 second generation are pro-Tommy. That's interesting. So maybe when you say pro-Islam, that's a vague term, but do you mean it in a positive way, as in they feel empathy with Muslims who are being labelled wrongly as terrorists, just as Irish people were 20 years ago, labelled as terrorists? When I heard that Sinead O'Connor had embraced Islam, I thought maybe she just missed the good old days of falsely being accused of being a terrorist. But it's interesting that you say that. But those Irish left-wingers, radicals, nationalists, whatever you want to call them, are perhaps pound for pound more common over here than if you go back home to Ireland. A lot of people have forgotten about the Republican struggle, the dream for a united Ireland, even though all major political parties in the Republic, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, pay lip service to the goal of a united Ireland. Are they actually pushing for it? Are they doing anything to achieve it? And would the people want it? I hope they would. I certainly do. But as the Good Friday Agreement acknowledges, it will be for the people to decide, and there may be a border poll at some point. Brexit may lead to the border poll, and there may well be a united Ireland. Time will tell. Time will tell. Anyway, I don't wish to go on about Ireland, as it's very niche. I don't wish to go on about Speaker's Corner, but I do acknowledge that probably most people who have stumbled upon this channel have done so because of the famous corner of London in Hyde Park, Speaker's Corner. I've been getting a few interactions on Instagram and Twitter, people saying, "Oh, I've watched your channel, much appreciated." I will try and push the social media more so. I think it was Joe Lewis reached out on Facebook. I haven't really done much on Facebook with it, but look, as long as you guys, and I don't care if it's only like 2 of you, 1 of you, as long as someone is listening, I will continue with this project that's been a lot of great fun for me. Share it with somebody that you think would appreciate it. We want to reach out to other parts of the world. Coming soon, can't say too much, but there will be a trip. We're taking the camera on the road again. There will be vlogs coming from an undisclosed country somewhere in Eastern Europe. Maybe I'll ask them your question about whether it's okay to insult Eastern Europeans but not Irish people. I'm not sure what was meant by it. You can't say anything these days. Who knows? So yeah, pay close attention. As ever, if anyone has any topic you would like me to do, apart from talking to Alumba, because as that's been done. Send an email to lessonsforlife247@gmail.com and I'll do my best to get back to you. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening. This has been Lessons for Life. It's been a good Sunday. I had a good vibe today. Thank you for sharing. We'll do it all again soon. We were here, we're gone. Ladies.